Well, I don't know about you, but I have a pretty eclectic group of friends and acquaintances on my Facebook page. And yesterday it was kind of funny. One of my friends, I have all politics on there, right? I don't get a lot of political posts because we're all also in the spiritual communities as well. So there was a political post that went up yesterday. It was posted by a Republican, and they thought it was important that they post it. They thought it was a nice thing to post. And one of my Democratic friends got really upset by it, inflamed by it, was actually saying some pretty nasty things about it. And then another of my Democrat friends came on and thought it was the funniest thing they'd ever seen in their lives. Who's right? Who's right? We have three completely different perspectives there. The person posting the picture thought that it was relevant and important to post. One person thought that it was horrible, the worst thing they'd seen in their lives, highly offended. And the other person thought it was the funniest thing they had seen in years. Who's right? What's your perspective? What's your perspective? Have you ever paused in life to consider your perceptions of reality? You do know yours is not the only one, right? Just saying. But we sometimes forget that awareness because we go through life believing that everybody sees everything exactly the same way that we do, right? We forget that awareness. And then we don't understand why there's conflict. And that's what we're going to be talking about and exploring today. My talk is Perception is Reality. Or is it? Or is it? And we're continuing with our monthly theme, Living Our Lessons, where we're looking at the lessons of the science of mind and how we can live this teaching in our lives. We talk about it being relative to us, it being practical and applicable in our lives. So this month we're looking at some of those ways that this teaching is applicable in our lives. I'll be interchanging some words today, so my wordsmiths, sit back and relax. I'm going to be using perspective, perception, and point of view sort of interchangeably because I think they're pretty similar in meaning. It's about our attitudes. It's about our beliefs. It's about the way that we see things in our minds, our mental impressions, if you will. And it's how we filter everything that we sense through our touch, our sight, our hearing, our smell, our taste. All of that stuff comes into us through our senses, and then we assign it meaning based on a whole lot of years of experience, right? Because we know what things mean when they happen. We know what that smell means. We know what that looks like. We all have those meanings assigned in our belief system through which we filter everything that happens. We give it meaning. Now, Ernest Holmes is the founder of Centers for Spiritual Living. He's also the author of The Science of Mind, which is the textbook that we teach from, the philosophy that we teach here. And in it, he tells us the whole purpose, this is important, right? The whole purpose of the science of mind is to reconcile the apparent separation between the spiritual world, which is perfect, and the material world, which is apparently imperfect. To reconcile back into the wholeness that life is. The science of mind is a teaching of wholeness, isn't it? It's a teaching of oneness, a teaching of unity. And so he says the whole purpose in teaching this is to reunite that apparent separation. We believe these things, these bodies are separate from each other. But yet in the spiritual, we are all one. We are all connected as one. He goes on to explain that the spiritual world is the cause of the material world. And we know that the creation process happens from thought, from the invisible to the visible to form. I've used my music stand and now this beautiful podium for some time now. For that, it had to be somebody's idea in their mind before it ever got drawn on paper, before it ever got manufactured. And that's the same thing in our lives. Everything that we see around us is first a thought, is first an idea that comes through someone in order to be created in form. So, taking this idea further, the only world that can appear to us, the only world that can appear to us is the one that we mentally perceive. The one that we mentally perceive. Each one of us, individualized, unique expressions that we are, based on that bucket of experiences that we've had and the meanings that we have assigned to things. What that means. What that means. And I don't know about you, but I have noticed occasionally in my life that perception's a little wonky. That's a spiritual term, by the way. Perception can be a little wonky. We've all heard the stories of family experiences, two siblings telling stories later in life about an event that happened that they shared, and they get into an argument because no, it didn't happen that way. Yes, it did. You weren't there. Yes, I was. It didn't happen that way. That's not what. Anybody ever experienced that? And it could be something as simple as a dinner party. I was at a dinner party last week and talked to someone that was there the next day. Totally different interpretations and impressions and perceptions and points of view about what was experienced. Perception's wonky. It's wonky. So it seems that our physical experience of life is really the result of how we perceive it. It is a result of our perception. If we've only experienced lack, limitation, extreme poverty, we're going to have a set of beliefs, a set of perceptions through which we filter all things money in our lives, aren't we? We're going to think things like, there's never enough. Maybe I'm not enough. I'm a victim of everybody else out there. The rich are bad. They're unkind. They're not generous because they have all the money and I have none. These are perceptions that get embodied in us, from which we then continue to create our life, right? Continue to create our life. So we can see how maybe this level of consciousness would limit our future experience, because we're recreating from that same bucket, the same well, if you will, of beliefs that we have affirmed, that we have assigned meaning to in our lives. That's just the way it is, right? That is the way it is for me. Whether that's in our finance, our health, our career, relationships, or spirituality. It's a whole bucket of stuff, isn't it? We've got all these little realms and compartments of our life of where stuff can happen. So maybe, you tell me, would expanding our consciousness maybe be a good thing to think about, to check in with some of those beliefs and some of those perceptions that we might hold? I think so. Unless, of course, your life is okay and perfect in each and every one of those realms, and you are never shaken up at all. The harmony is never disturbed in your inner peace. You folks can take a nap. The rest of us, this is for us, okay? This is for the rest of us. So I want to look at Holmes' idea a little more closely, because I think this is, he says the whole purpose of the science of mind, and if you think about a couple of his main ideas in the teaching, one of them is, both are from the Bible, but one is, it is done to us as we believe, right? It is done to us as we believe, the law of cause and effect. The other one is from Romans and is, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Or as Holmes used to like to say, change your thinking, change your life, right? Change your thinking, change your life. That's what that means. So these are two of the core concepts, core lessons of the science of mind that we learn about how we perceive our reality. It's done unto us as we believe, and how we can change that. Change your thinking, change your life. It was Marianne Williamson who said, love and fear represent two different lenses through which we see the world. Which I choose to use will determine what I think I see. Ponder that for a second. What lens are you choosing? What lens are you choosing? Think about that. I'm choosing this? Yes. What lens are you choosing to perceive the world through? We've talked about the glass half empty, the glass half full. We talked about that last month. But I think the more important question here is, does the lens through which I am choosing to view the world make me happy? We all want to be happy, right? Anybody in the room not want to be happy? Let me just check in, make sure I'm not all wet here. Okay, good. So does the lens through which I'm choosing to view the world make me happy? The way we choose to perceive the world directly affects the way we experience it. Anybody familiar with Greg Braden, author, speaker, wrote a little book called Real Love. Kind of swept through New Thought really largely. What was that, 10 years ago, 15 years ago? In that book, he tells a story that I think is a wonderful story that reminds us about our choice. And kind of goes like this. Lady came to see him, and she was really upset. And she was complaining about her husband. This is not about you, honey, okay? Just want to make that clear. She was complaining about her husband, and she was talking about how untidy he is and how he left things all over the house. Just clutter everywhere. Wouldn't pick up after himself at all. I'm not talking about you. And wouldn't put his laundry in the dirty hamper. Nothing she could do. She was so frustrated. And Greg could tell she was really, really frustrated. You know, she even called the guy a pig, right? She called the guy a pig. That's how frustrated she was. And she said, I need him to change. And I need you to help me to change him. And Greg said, oh, no, contraire. That's not how it works. You see, your spouse has freedom of choice of how he wants to show up in this relationship, how he wants to show up in the world. And so do you. And so do you. And so he talked to her and he told her that what the choices that you have in this relationship are to live with the pig and hate it, live with the pig and love it, leave the pig. Now, that didn't make her very happy, as you can imagine. She wanted door number 4, change the darn pig, right? I think we've all gotten caught in this trap of forgetting that everyone has freedom of choice on how they want to show up in this thing called life, right? Everyone has choice. And it doesn't always align with my choices, my perceptions. The husband didn't have a perception that he was doing anything wrong, did he? I mean, I can't believe he'd get up every morning and just think, how can I annoy my wife today? Right? I don't think that's a conscious thought that we have. It's just how he was being. He did perceive her as a nag, though, don't you think? Because she was on his back all the time, wanting him to change. So we have the perception. We have the perception of how life is working. Ours is right, of course, and everybody else's is incorrect, but we'll get to that later. They had different perspectives of the situation, and neither one, though, was happy, were they? Neither one was happy in their situations. Now, for me, when a situation's bugging me, I often remember this story. Okay, you got 3 choices here. What are you doing? If I'm unhappy about it, I'm probably already hating the pig, right? And the pig can be any situation, any circumstance, any relationship, anything in our lives can be the pig, right? You get that? We have a choice of how we perceive those situations in our lives. So if I'm already hating it, that's probably my step 1. I'm hating it. Well, do I really want to live there? No. So my other 2 choices are I either change my perception and figure out how to love it, or I leave it. If you remember a few weeks ago, I was talking to you about my challenging customers and my challenging staff. Remember that situation, that story? It's ongoing. But that's in my day job. And I have had to really change my lenses a lot as I've moved through this and change my perception of it. Change my perception from a common enemy, the customer was totally wrong, to recognizing all of the dimensions of what is going on. And I cannot change them. I cannot change them. I know that. All I can do is change how I choose to experience them and how I choose to respond to them. This is our work. This is our work, is taking these unpleasant situations and choosing to see them through different lenses. If you remember a couple of weeks ago also, we were talking about William James and his beautiful quote about stress. I think it applies here about choices too, is the greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. We all have that power. We all have that power to choose a more affirmative thought, a more affirming thought, a kinder thought. We all have that power. So how can I change my perception and change my reality? How can I do that? I've told you what it is. Now let's talk about how we can actually affect change in that realm. If it's a relationship, using my relationship with my staff and the customer, I've had to choose to see things differently every day, sometimes every moment, choosing to see things differently. It takes deeper work to be able to accept that our perception may be making us unhappy. And that was really what I recognized, is that my perception of making them wrong for how they were behaving was making me unhappy. It was putting a lot of stress on me dealing with that. And it's like, no. So I've chosen to approach it more mindfully, more calmly, more consciously. And I'm starting to find humor. I have to keep that to myself though right now. Okay, they're not seeing the humor in it. This is still World War III. And some of it's so silly, but it's this idea of looking at things just from a little different perspective, and try and help them to see a different perspective as well. Again, for me, it's been moving slowly, consciously, rationally, and calmly. I have to be that calm in the eye of the storm. And my work is to be fully present with the encounter. So how about you? Any relationship challenges that you're dealing with? It could be an intimate relationship. It could be a business relationship. It could be anything. Homeowners association relationships. Those are always fun. Anybody have one of those they're dealing with? Practice there. Practice there. What about health? Health challenges can be so difficult because they really, really snatch all of our attention. Our focus becomes myopic, doesn't it? When we're facing a health challenge, everything else falls away. And it can become very sharp and painfully focused for us in that moment. But even in the midst of a diagnosis, even in the midst of it, we still have a choice of the perspective in which we're going to view it. We have a choice in the perspective we're going to view it. Do we allow fear to rule, or do we choose to let love heal? Do we let fear rule, or do we choose to let love heal? We're spiritual beings. It is our spiritual nature to be health, to be perfect health as spiritual beings. Sometimes in the material realm, that's not what we experience. But it doesn't mean in the spiritual that we become imperfect suddenly. We are not. So we choose to focus on that love and that health to support our bodies and our natural immunity, our natural immune systems, and the healing functions. Fear doesn't support that. Fear doesn't support that. Our careers can also be a place where we might need to shift perspective. Our careers is another place. Many people feel that work is a battlefield. Is it Thursday yet? Because I'm almost to Friday, right? I mean, sometimes we feel that way about it. Just get me through it, rather than a place of my creative expression. How can I give my gifts to this place today? How can I be a spirit for good? What if you're retired or retiring? What about that? How do you view that process? Is it a place of expansion and creativity because now you got a little extra time that you can grow and expand more? Because that's what we always do. We're growing and expanding. Or is it a time of boredom? Is it a time of deteriorating health? Is it a time of stagnation, slowing down? What's your perception? What's your beliefs around that? Around aging in general? We all have a set of beliefs around that, don't we? What are yours? And of course, our finances. Do you have a perspective of lack and limitation or abundance and prosperity? Do you approach your checkbook with fear and trepidation? Open your bank statements, your credit card statements with dread? Or are you choosing to be grateful for what we have in advance and for the more that is coming? When we know that our source is greater, smarter, I used to have a practitioner that said that God's smart. Our source is smart, right? Smarter and more abundant than I could ever be. When I know that, when I can anchor in that, then I can begin to choose my responses from that point of view, from a solutions perspective, rather than from and receiving answers and receiving the help that I need, rather than that focused on the problem, right? Don't we do that? Gosh, we do that a lot. Get focused on the problem rather than turn away and focus on what we want, knowing what we want. That's so important. So important to put our energy there. I like to think of choosing a new perspective as reaching out into the field of infinite possibilities and just grabbing a happier perspective. Because we know we're surrounded by that field of infinite possibilities. I grab a happier perspective. I grab more abundant perspective. I grab a more healthy lifestyle. I grab that from the field of infinite possibilities. That's how I look at changing my perspective. I'm not saying that we all have to change our perspective. Your perspective may be just fine. I hope that it is. If there's any area where it's not, maybe some of these tools and practices might help to refine that. Remember, we're always growing and expanding in that upward spiral. None of us stagnate ever, 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 ever. So let's become aware and notice where those areas are, where we could experience more happiness, more joy, more prosperity, more health. And let's focus on what we perceive there that has us in the less if we want to be in the more, right? Let's move into our practicing the principles this morning and see how we might take this home and use it in a little practice this week and work on a perception or two if there's anything that you want to take a look at. Remember, if you're not signed up for the Mindful Monday email, that's the email that I send out every Monday morning. That's a summary of what we've talked about today that gives you these principles and practicing the principles in more detail. You can sign up here in the lobby or online. You can just send me an email and I'll get you on the list that way as well. So I've got 3 for us this morning. The first one, is there a pig in your life? Is there a pig in your life? The pig can be in any area of your life. Remember that. It can be health, career, relationship, finance, or spirituality. Anybody see the Time cover years and years ago that said God is dead? Yeah. If you live from that perspective, you might be having a spiritual crisis. So that's how it can show up in your spirituality. But it can show up in any area of our life. This week, I'm inviting you to be still and to contemplate each area of your life, each one of those areas, and see if the experience you're currently having could be any happier whatsoever. Are you filled with delight to overflowing in every area of your life? If not, maybe consider which of those areas could be a little more happy for you, a little more joy. Is there any place that you're blaming something external to yourself, someone external to yourself for your unhappiness? Is the boss not paying you enough money? Is the spouse not picking up their laundry? Is the traffic too heavy? Is there any place that you might be blaming anything outside of yourself for your unhappiness? Use your journal and record these thoughts. Step 1 is just to become aware, record those thoughts. Step 2 then is to ask Spirit. Ask Spirit. If you find that there might be an area that you would like to experience different, use the spiritual practice of visioning. Use the spiritual practice of visioning and ask those 4 questions. Take yourself into a nice soft meditation. Ask the 4 questions. What is Spirit's vision of this pig? Of this situation? What is Spirit's vision of this situation? Spirit's got a sense of humor. What is Spirit's vision of this situation? Number 2, then, what must I become in order that this vision can manifest through me? Because I'm obviously not it yet, or it would already be there. So I've got to become something more. What must I release? What's blocking it right now? What must I release? And then the last question is, hey, is there anything else? I have an open channel to the divine right now. I am receptive and listening. Is there anything else I need to know about this or anything else? It's a wonderful process. It's a wonderful process. So record your answers in your journal. Again, you're gathering information. You're gathering information. Number 3 is ready, set, go. You're ready. You went to the first step of contemplation and you found out what might be needing a little attention. Number 2, you got Spirit's vision. You got set. Spirit's giving you the higher vision for this situation that you can now begin to take action on. And that's step 3, go. Take action on changes that you can begin to make to transform your perception in that area. Practice mindfulness. Practice mindfulness, focusing on your new choices to see the world differently. I love what if questions. It's a wonderful way to begin to shift your perspective. What if I look at my finances as more than enough every month? What if I do blessing at the beginning of the month of all of the income that comes to me, knowing that it is more than enough to pay my expenses, to save for my future, to share with my community, and to go have some fun on, right? I've got more than enough for that every month in my life, every year, every decade of my life. I have more than enough. I know that. If it's career, I have an abundant opportunity to use my creativity and my skills, my training. I'm using my training now, so that's fun. Asking what if questions is a wonderful way to get your mind engaged to think up more creative ideas. So changing our perspective is not always easy because, again, it's the way we assign meaning to our lives. But it is possible. It is possible when we're willing to look at what is. When we're willing to look at what is, we become aware of what those perceptions are. Oh, wow, I didn't realize I perceived life so differently from you. Let's talk about that. And also then to surrender what is not making us happy. Rather than blaming something for not making us happy, why don't we just give it up? I found a cute sign when I was in Virginia, at a little country store. It said, give it to God and go to bed. Or go to sleep. Give it to God and go to sleep. And I was like, yeah. So that's why I'm in bed now. Just give it to God and go to sleep. So we're changing our perceptions. We're exchanging the old that doesn't support us for something that will bring us more joy in our lives. I think that's a great exchange. We all want to be happy. We agreed to that. We all want to be happy. So this week, let's choose happiness. Let's choose happiness and watch those perceptions. So would you join me with a prayer this morning? Oh, yes, just taking that nice breath, breathing in, recognizing that there is one power, presence, life. God is all that there is. There is nothing separating that which is spirit and that which is form. It is all one, united in the wholeness and the complexity of life. God is even the pigs. Whole, perfect, and complete. Infinite intelligence, wisdom, wholeness, love, Infinite love. So much love. It is love itself. And that is from which it creates. The substance of creation is love. And so I know that I am a manifestation of this love in form, and that I am whole, perfect, and complete in this manifestation as spirit in form. And as I know this for myself, I know that for each one of us gathered here today in room, online, or listening later, that we are united in the wholeness. There is no time or space between us. We are united in this oneness, in this love, in the joy and full expression of life, in the abundance and prosperity, in the health and the healing, just in the total creative expression of who we are. That's what we've come to do and be. We are whole, perfect, and complete. So knowing this, I speak my word for and about each of us, knowing, claiming, and accepting that whatever we have on our hearts today, as we bring that into our minds and into this prayer, that it is lifted into the power of this prayer, where two or more are gathered. I am. God is. We are. And so we lift this prayer of each individual, surrounding it in this love, knowing its full and complete manifestation in this moment. That all that is necessary is coming forward to each and every one of us to make manifest that which is on our heart's desire. All that is needed, no matter where it might be, is coming forward. If it's a miracle, it's a miracle. If it's joy, if it's love, if it's health, if it's wholeness, if it's abundance, all that we need is right here, right now, unfolding as us, through us. How grateful I am for this knowing. How grateful I am for the power of prayer and knowing that we can come together in community and lift our hearts, our consciousness, and our acceptance of the good that we are together in community and watch it unfold in our lives, in the life of this community. And so with such joy and gratitude, I release this prayer into the action of law, the activity of mind, for I know that it is done. I know that it is so, and we affirm this together by saying, and so it is.